There are 67 brawlers with a hypercharge in Brawl Stars. So today, I will be brutally ranking all of them from worst to best. This will give you guys an idea on which ones you should buy and which ones you should avoid. Grab some popcorn and enjoy. Starting the F tier is going to be Jean's Hypercharge. The super pull is a lot quicker, which takes away the ability to attack the enemy while they are being pulled. There is also no reason to pull multiple enemies at once because it is basically suicide. This hypercharge literally nerfs the brawler and it is definitely the worst. Next in the F tier is Pearl's Hypercharge. So what this does is that Pearl's super leaves a burning area behind that deals damage. But Pearl's super knocks you out of it, so it makes no sense. It needs to be changed or reworked soon, otherwise it will always be in the F tier. Next in the F tier is Nani's Hypercharge. This one isn't good because most of the hypercharge is wasted in your super. The bigger peep doesn't add much value, and it's definitely one of the worst. Next is Miko's Hypercharge. This one takes a while to charge, and his hypercharge super is very easy to waste. If you miss it, or the brawler dies before the super lands, then hypercharge is wasted. It's just very underwhelming. And lastly in the F tier is Sprout's Hypercharge. So all it does is leave a burning bush that damages enemies if they touch it. But the problem is no one will even get close to, so it's quite useless. It's only good in Heist, but Sprout isn't a Heist brawler. I don't think I have ever dealt damage with it, and it's just terrible. That's the F tier done. Now onto the D tier. Starting off the D tier is Brock's Hypercharge. In competitive play, you will see the pros click their super then their hypercharge because the hypercharge super is terrible. The stat boosts are okay, but it's still D tier. So next up we have Charlie's Hypercharge. This one is pretty bad because the spiders do literally nothing. The only situation that they might be useful is to tank a few shots from snipers, but it's still terrible. Next in the D tier is 8-Bit's Hypercharge. So another hypercharge which is very lackluster. This one doesn't provide much value, except charge a bit of super. It barely does any damage if it connects, which it rarely will. Most of the time you will put it behind a wall because if you put it out in the open it will get destroyed very quickly. The only good thing is the speed boost, which is good for 8-Bit. But outside of that it's pretty useless. Next up is Shelly's Hypercharge. So this one is just a bigger super from her normal one. This is very boring and blank, and it doesn't really have the game-changing potential like the top hypercharges. It does cycle very quickly, but other than that, it's very lackluster. Next in the D tier is Colt's Hypercharge. This one is also just a bigger super. It's very good in Heist and can help Colt hit more of his shots. But other than that, it takes a lot of skill to use effectively, and it's not worthwhile getting. Now we have MZ's Hypercharge. This one just knocks the enemies back with a little spray of damage. This can be good against tanks, but it's basically just an extra gadget use, and I don't really like it. Next is Daryl's Hypercharge. Daryl's just shoots a spray of bullets around him when he uses his super. But the bullets do so little damage that it will just tickle the enemy. The stat boosts with him are good though, so it's not the worst. Next in the D tier is Primo's Hypercharge. So again, this is more about the stat boosts. The shield and speed are very strong on him, even though the Hypercharge super isn't great. It does have some potential, but it's not game-changing. And lastly, in the D tier is Tick's Hypercharge. So fundamentally, this is very strong, but against good players, no one will walk into the mines. The mines can be good for controlling an area, though, and the stat boosts are good, so it has to go here. That's the D tier done. Now on to the C tier. Starting off the C tier is Squeak's Hypercharge. Sometimes you can deal some good damage with the extra super, but most of the time the extra blobs will end up way across the map, not even affecting the action. It's very inconsistent, and you'll struggle to get value out of it. So now for Fang's Hypercharge. The Hypercharge super itself is pretty good, but the thing is that it takes so incredibly long to get it. I think you need like 4 supers to charge it, and you will be lucky to get one in a game, and against good players you will never get it, so it has to go here. Next in the C tier is a new hypercharge in Meg. When Meg transforms back into her Mecha, she gains a shield, but she already has a lot of HP in her gadget, so it's not really needed. And her bigger swipe can be useful sometimes, but it's very boring and blank. Now is Carl's Hypercharge. This one did get a buff recently, and it has made it better. But it doesn't pack a punch like some of the other hypercharges. It can be good to get some kills in control areas, but that's just about it. Next up is another new hypercharge in BO. This one allows you to put 5 mines instead of 3, and they do not override existing mines on the map. This hypercharge is kind of a hit and miss. Sometimes players will run straight into them and you will deal a lot of damage, but good players will be able to avoid them. Next in the C tier is Buster's Hypercharge. This one can be good to help your team because you can just hide inside Buster's shield, but it is very easy to outplay. You can just wait for the shield to be over, then attack him. It's nothing special, so it's C tier. Now is Grom's Hypercharge. I might be underrating this one a bit, but I think it's pretty average. The extra super is useful for more damage and knockbacks, but it is easy to miss, and any brawlers with escape abilities will dodge it. It does cycle quite fast, so it's a good hypercharge, so hold off on my ranking for now. Next is Spike's Hypercharge. So another hypercharge which is just a bigger super, which doesn't add much value. It can be good for controlling key areas in Brawl Ball or Hot Zone, but there are just better hypercharges out there. Next in the C tier is Ruff's Hypercharge. So this one seems broken, but it's very hard to use effectively. You need good teammates and good timing for it to work, or you will waste it. It is good in pro play, but it's C tier because of how much coordination it requires to work. At is Angelo's Hypercharge. So the Hypercharge super sticks to him, which allows him to move where he wants. The Hyperchakri it's strong and pairs very well with his healing star power. But the problem is, his Hypercharge takes a very long time to get, so you will rarely get it. Now for Otis Hypercharge. This one isn't very valuable because Otis Super already guarantees a free kill anyway, and the stun won't do much. It's also very limited because you only get that one kill and there isn't much more to it. Next in the C tier is Hank's Hypercharge. This one got a huge nerf and it isn't as half as good as it was before. The homing projectiles won't connect much. It's only good if the enemies are really close to you or close to the projectiles when the release. It doesn't have much team wipe potential anymore and doesn't pack any punch. And lastly in the C tier is Poco's Hypercharge. The Hypercharge super itself isn't that great because the shield decays so quickly that if you overheal someone you are basically wasting your super. It cycles extremely quickly though, so that is the good thing about it. That's the C tier done, now onto the B tier. These hypercharges are decent but not as good as the A or S tiers. Next up is B's Hypercharge. So B's super spawns an addition row of Bs that have extra range. This is so good for confirming slows and you are able to slow 2 or 3 opponents down. Next in the B tier is Belle's Hypercharge. This makes her super home in on enemies so you won't miss it. But her Hypercharge super is already pretty easy to hit. I find the stat boosts are what makes this Hyperchesarv worth it, and I get a lot more kills just from that damage boost. Next up is Rosa's Hyperchair. The Hypercharge super itself isn't great, but the stat boosts like the speed and shield make it worthwhile. The slow on her super is also good for closing the gap between opponents and confirming kills. It's a very solid hypercharge. Next in the B tier is Jackie's Hypercharge. So this one is very scary to play against because Jackie gets a lot of good stat boosts. And the slow on her super is very useful to stop enemies from escaping and to confirm kills. You can make many great plays with it, and it's a strong hypercharge. So next is Cordelius. So what it does is that it slows the enemies down a lot in the Shadows realm, and you can get that free kill. So it's very good, but it takes a while to charge up and it doesn't have the team wipe potential that a lot of the top hypercharges do, so it's alright. So next in the B tier is Gale's Hypercharge. So this used to be one of the best in the game, but with the recent nerfs to the charge rate for both his super and hypercharge, it has really hurt Gale a lot. It now takes forever to charge like Fang, and you rarely get it in a game. The hypercharge itself is very good, but the charge rate is the big problem. Next up we have Bull's Hypercharge. So this one can tank so much damage, and it allows you to charge at any opponent and deal a lot of damage and cycle to your next super. It has a lot of team wipe potential, and it makes Bull a much better brawler, so for that reason, it has to be B tier. So now we have Crow's Hypercharge. So the super itself isn't anything special. Many people think that it will get many crazy team wipes, but a lot of the time it is very lackluster. But in Heist, it is a game changer, and it can deal 50% of the heist safe. So it has to be higher up because of how much damage it can deal to a stationary target. So next in the B tier is Maisie's Hypercharge. So you can get some crazy team wipes with it because of the extra shots that come with the Maisie super. So the reason why Maisie was so broken in the past was because of her hypercharge and cycling abilities. So the reason why it has dropped down is because of her supercharge rate nerf, which has affected her hypercharge, but you can still get some crazy team wipes. Next is Piper's hypercharge. This is a great one for Piper because it can help her open up the map, and the knockback when she lands is very strong and useful. Overall, it's a very solid hypercharge. Next in the B tier is Jessie's hypercharge. This one, of course, is broken in Heist, but in other modes, it's only really good for wasting the opponent's ammo. If used correctly, it can put some pressure on the enemy team, so it's decent. Now for Terra's hypercharge. The bigger super might not sound like much, but it is very strong for pulling multiple opponents together, which leads to multiple team wipes. This hypercharge has the game-changing potential, so it's high B tier. And lastly in the B tier is Barley's hypercharge. This is very good for Barley because it can help him control key areas on the map. It does a lot of damage and covers a large area, which is great when the opponents are clumped together. It makes Barley a much better brawler. That's the B tier done. Now onto the A tier. So now we have BB's hypercharge. So when you hit a hypercharge bubble, it will split off into two bubbles, so this one can do so much damage, put so much pressure on the opponents, and make a lot of game-changing plays. Also, the shield and speed boosts are so good on BB and make her a monster in hypercharge form. Next in the A tier is Nita's hypercharge. This hypercharge is great for forcing the opponents back and wasting their ammo. It can put the opponents in an uncomfortable situation when used correctly. It can be a game changer in game modes like Hot Zone, and it is broken in Heist. It's great hypercharge and definitely A tier. Next in the A tier is Buzz's hypercharge. So this one is simple, just super around the map and get kills. It's great for putting pressure on the enemy team and getting to certain points on the map. The stat boosts are also very good, so it's a strong hypercharge. Next is Ash's hypercharge. This one is very strong because the extra rats can put pressure on the opponents and overwhelm the enemy. It also charges in two supers, so you'll be getting it frequently. It's not higher on this list because brawlers like Poco and Sandy counter it easily, but it's still very strong. So now we have Colette's hypercharge. So the reason why it's so good is because you can cycle it so quickly. If the spirit hits someone, you instantly get your super back so you can deal more damage. It can deal 20% of the heist safe. And of course, it destroys tanks, so it's a strong hypercharge. Next in the A tier is Edgar's hypercharge. When this was first released, it was broken, but as the metas have evolved, is slowly dropping down. The hypercharge itself is good, and you can get many team wipes, but it takes a while to charge because of how bad Edgar is. Next in the A tier is Surged hypercharge. This one is very good because it deals so much damage and you can snipe people across the map with it. The stat boosts are also good, and it's worth buying. Next US is Sandy's hypercharge. So the reason why it's so strong is because the hypercharge basically lasts the whole Sandy super, and you teammates get that speed boost for the full duration of the super. The mute is also great as well as the stat boosts. It does take a while to cycle though, but it's still a very good hypercharge. Next is Leon's hypercharge. The hypercharge itself is very good, and you can make many great plays with the extra damage and invisibility. But it takes a while to charge, and in this meta especially, he will struggle a bit to get it. Next in the A tier is Penny's hypercharge. It's great for providing a lot of area control, and it's very annoying for the enemy team. And if you put it in a safe place, the enemies will have trouble getting rid of it. It's a very versatile hypercharge. Next in the A tier, we have another new hypercharge in Eve. This one is really strong because you can spawn so many hatchlings on the map and it can just overwhelm the opponents. And if you use the mythic gear, you can spawn even more. The only downside to this is that it can be hard to build up the hypercharge against good players because they can dodge Eve's attack, but other than that, it's really strong. Next is Mortis hypercharge. This is great for getting many kills and team wipes. It's very easy to cycle multiple supers inside one hypercharge. It can take a while to build up though, so that's what's restricting it from the S tier, but it's still very strong. Now for Barry's hypercharge. This is so good when paired with tanks because it can provide so much healing and support for them. You can control key areas with it, and it cycles so quickly. It makes Barry a much better brawler. And lastly, in the A tier is Gray's hypercharge. This one is so good in modes like Hot Zone and Brawl Ball because you can keep teleporting up the map with a shield and take control. It's so versatile and can be used everywhere, so it's very strong. That's the A tier done. Now for the best of the best, the S tier. First in the S tier is Chester's Hypercharge. This one is completely broken and it will get you many team wild. The bomb itself is enough to one-shot most of the brawlers, and if they survive, they will die to the gas or the sticky super. Next up is of course going to be Dynamic. So what this does is adds extra damage to the bomb, then it explodes with little dynamic sticks that deal more damage and charge super. The team wipe potential is insane, and you can cycle 2 or 3 supers inside a single hypercharge. Next in the S tier is Sam's Hypercharge. This one is also crazy broken. You can deal so much damage and kill the enemy team in less than 5 seconds. It does take a while to charge, and Sam isn't the best brawler, so that will hurt it a bit. Next is Lou's Hypercharge. This one is very good now since Lau got a reload speed buff a while ago. It has allowed him to cycle Hypercharge quicker. An instant freeze is so strong, especially because you can throw it over walls and surprise people. Next is Stu's Hypercharge. This one can put so much pressure on the enemy team. It has insane mobility and pairs very well with this Gasso heal star power. It can be used in many situations and it's very strong. Next in the S tier is Mandy's Hypercharge. This one has a lot of team wipe potential in fast-paced modes and in 5 versus 5. The damage with the super is also insane, and it can one-shot so many brawlers. Next is Max Hypercharge. This gives the whole team more speed boost and charges some of their super. This just leads to you overwhelming the opposition and making that decisive play to win the game. Next in the S tier is Mr. P's Hypercharge. This one did get a nerf in the recent update, but it's still very strong. You just need to put the base in a more offensive position to get value. It feels like you have an extra player on your team and it's very broken. Next is Rico's Hypercharge. This has so much team the potential because the bullets will keep bouncing and bouncing, and they would be unavoidable. It also cycles very quickly, so you will be getting it frequently. And the third best Hypercharge goes to Frank. This one also has so much team wipe potential. It's so easy to cycle and the stat boosts are good. You are so fast and so tanky, which makes it impossible to kill you in Hypercharge form. The second best Hypercharge is Janet's Hypercharge. This one has been broken since release and for good reason. It cycles ridiculously fast, and the Hypercharge itself will get you so many free kills. It's a very strong Hypercharge, and it is the reason Janet is meta. And the best Hypercharge in Brawl Stars goes to Melody. The reason why it is so good is because it stacks onto her star powers and gadgets. So if you have 6 notes circling you, you get that 36% boost in movement speed, and on top of that, if you are running the interlude gadget, you gain a 60% shield. You are so fast and so tanky, and you deal so much damage, so it's easily the best Hypercharge in Brawl Stars. And that is every Hypercharge ranked from worst to best. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend this one right here where I give the 5 easiest max tiers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.